all still here. Fabulous. No, not at all. Somebody else got my speech down. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister called the last general election, in her own words, to strengthen my hand in the Brexit negotiations.
Yes. Good one.
She claimed that she offered strong and stable leadership. Oh well. Unfortunately, the country and many of our previous supporters trusted her. So, 14 months after the referendum, a question for you. Have we come any closer to regaining control of our borders?
No.
Are we able to conclude our own trade agreements, or are we any closer to doing so?
No.
You're right, we have not. And our Parliament and our courts are still subordinate to a foreign power. Far from a strong hand, we now learn that the European Commission pretty much dictated the language regarding Theresa May's financial settlement offer to the European Union. And we know now that Donald Tusk has got a similarly arrogant attitude to others. I personally have a difficulty with a foreign diplomat sitting in, or standing in Downing Street telling our Prime Minister, no matter what I think of her myself, that the British Prime Minister has failed to make significant progress. The Prime Minister of Great Britain. Can you imagine that happening in Moscow? Nobody would dare, would they? And I don't know about you, but I believe that the arrogance of Jean-Claude Juncker, Guy Verhofstadt and Michel Barnier and Donald Tusk is as startling as it is plain rude. So, Prime Minister, where is your strong and stable leadership? Because I do not see it. And let us dwell a minute, if we may, on the Prime Minister's speech in Florence. What did she actually say? I mean, many of you will be saying, not a lot. I'm going to agree with you, but I'm going to go off my speech. She said, we are moving through a critical period in history. The British people have decided to leave the European Union. We may be leaving the EU, but we are not leaving Europe. The UK's departure is inevitably a difficult process. The UK is leaving the EU. Well, very good, Sherlock. Very clever. What a startlingly clever Prime Minister we have. I suspect Donald Tusk actually would have been better off saying, should try harder. But did she actually, to be fair, did she suggest anything concrete? No. I'm going to disagree with you. Well, I shouldn't do that, should I? You just all voted for me. You're not folk. I need to keep on the right side of you. But let me tell you why I think that maybe she did say something concrete. Because she asked for everything to stay exactly as it is. We will remain in the customs union, and we will remain in the single market, and we will be judged by a foreign court. Our present commitment to the European Union will continue, and there is a change. We will no longer be able to shape European Union policy. So what she's actually asked for is no change, in effect, until 2021 at the very earliest. Does that sound like leaving the European Union in a determined and focused manner? The same day that Theresa May made her speech, and effectively promised to continue paying into the EU budget, I noticed a small story tucked away in a local paper. That story said that the government is planning to axe 1,000 Royal Marines, that's around a sixth or a seventh of our entire commando force, in order to save 3 billion. So she's committed to spending 20 billion, she's trying to find the money from somewhere, and our Royal Marines are suffering as a result. The Prime Minister has asked for a transition period of around 2 years. Sounds like concrete, solid planning, doesn't it? Boris Johnson, to give him his due, has said that he wants that period to last no more than 2 years. I say that the transition period at all is unacceptable, and we must be prepared to get out now. Far from strengthening the UK's hand in Brexit negotiations, the Prime Minister's speech in Florence gave it away. The message that she sent was that the UK does not want to leave the European Union in anything but name. If further evidence was required, the threats from uncontrolled immigration, terrorism, a nuclear North Korea and potentially a nuclear Iran, an ever more assertive Russian Federation, and the need to hold our own global place in the world are all growing. Yet the Conservative government is dropping the ball, and they know they are. It's deliberate. With Brexit comes a greater need to possess full spectrum forces, law enforcement forces and armed forces, able to secure our territory at home and abroad, including our overseas territories. We need to be able to secure our borders on land, at sea and in the air. However, successive cuts, and cuts are a deliberate act, ladies and gentlemen. You don't do it not knowing that you're doing it. Successive cuts and the privatisation of functions such as recruitment have crippled our military. Currently, 13 of the Navy's 19-strong fleet of Type 23 and Type 45 destroyers are unable to go to sea due to a lack of manpower, fuel and supplies. And listen to this. We have fewer main battle tanks than neutral Switzerland. The government praises our servicemen and women while stabbing them in the back. And about 3 weeks ago, the Prime Minister said she was prepared to subordinate elements of our foreign policy, defence and foreign aid to the European Union.
Why?
Now that was pretty much concurrent with Jean-Claude Juncker's State of the Union speech, and it is in quite a state, isn't it? In which he said that he wants closer union in defence and foreign policy, and that all EU member states should adopt the euro, and that there will be a European finance minister. Not only does that fly in the face of the statements made by David Cameron and George Osborne in the Remain campaign, but it also demonstrates that we were 100% right in saying that they want a European armed forces and they want a fully European foreign policy.
Yes.
Just to remind you, I've just told you that Theresa May has said that she wants to subordinate parts of our foreign policy and armed forces to the European Union. Does any of this, suggest to you that we are on the way out of the European Union?
No.
Correct. And as I said yesterday, I can only conclude that the Conservative government either has no intention of taking us out of the European Union in anything but name, or they are simply incompetent or negligent enough to care. Not care. Or both, indeed. Surely, whichever the case, the Conservative government cannot be trusted to take us out of the European Union, or indeed to look after our security and govern us. The government, far from offering strong and stable leadership, has proven inept and unable to set and pursue clear strategic goals. We must demand the repeal of the European Communities Act and be prepared to leave now. As we all know, 17.4 million people voted to leave the European Union, and this party has a moral obligation, given our role in that process, to ensure that we do. Members of UKIP, the fight back starts here, it starts now, it starts today. But leaving the European Union in itself is not the end. In some of the media interviews that I've given in the last 24 hours or so, a lot of the journalists have said to me, well, isn't that it? When you get out of the European Union, what's the future? We are getting out of the European Union because we care about the future. Leaving the European Union is but the first step to taking control of our own destiny. The victory that we strive for is to launch our country on a path to being a global nation, a trading nation, a secure, prosperous and optimistic and confident nation. An optimistic nation that is also considered as a supporter of its friends, allies and Commonwealth abroad, and is proud to be called British. Across the UK, however, people see their communities changing, and they have little or no voice in the way that those communities are being shaped, the environment they live in, and the services that are provided to them. They are rarely consulted, and when they are, it is a matter of procedure rather than care for their opinion. Construction and housing developments are given the go-ahead without anyone being interested in what the local community thinks or how they are affected. Hear, hear. Doctors' surgeries are being closed, police numbers are being cut and crime is increasing. Multiculturalism is swamping or displacing our own British culture. This does not create the optimistic, confident nation that we all wish to live in. We will ensure that our schools teach history, and if a people don't have pride in what their forefathers achieved, they themselves will achieve nothing worthy of pride on the part of their successors. We must be credible, we must be professional, and we must have a full range of policies that can lead us to government and to leading the nation. In the coming weeks, I shall be embarking not only on holding the government to account over Brexit, but I shall also be making our party fit, lean and effective. I shall be working on improving our internal communications, identifying and utilising the tremendous skills and expertise that we have within the party, and enhancing our administration, governance and campaign planning. As some of my colleagues in the leadership contest, fellow candidates, have said, and they were right, we must never again leave it to the last moment to select our candidates. We must allow them time to prepare, to campaign and to work their constituencies, and we as a party must help them in that process. Local branches must have access to funds, and it is my intention to allow branches to retain 15% of the renewal subscriptions of members, with the caveat they may take some time to put the finances in such a state that we are able to do it, but that is my intention. And as soon as possible, I want us to start working constituencies and preparing for Westminster. I shall reinforce the role of the regions in providing training for all our candidates at all levels, for our activists and for our branch officers. I want you all to feel as though you are part of one team. I will also seek to provide support in campaign planning for all campaigns. Now, these things are going to take time, of course, to put in place, and they're going to take resources, and that is part of the work that I'm talking about engaging upon. But I shall myself shortly embark on a nationwide tour. During the hustings, you had the opportunity to grill me. Now it's my turn to get my own back. I'm going to demand from you to know what your problems are, what your concerns are, what your ideas and proposals are. Good. Lord help me. I shall put in place a professional platform built on what we already have, of course, consisting of the administrative and logistical functions that we need to support the projection of our policies into national politics here in Great Britain. I shall also, when I have the resources to do so, appoint an internal communications manager to work specifically on the task of enhancing internal communications. Under my leadership, you, my shadow cabinet, and I will develop a broad suite of policies, initially using the 2015 manifesto as a baseline, and we will mobilise and demonstrate our tremendous expertise and knowledge and make clear to the British people that we are a credible party, a party of national government able to lead the nation to hope in the future. To assist in doing that, I shall establish a process whereby members may propose policy through their branches, through party spokesmen. The spokesmen, through a transparent process, will each recruit an advisory group of voluntary subject matter experts from you, the members. That group, together with the spokesman, will contribute to the quality of our policies. Their task will be to ensure that we have policies that have depth and credibility and are absolutely 100% realistic. It is my intention, as I say, to sort out the finances of the party. They have been managed in a tremendously effective manner, given that there has been very little in the kitty. We need to change that, and I believe, having spoken to a number of people on this topic, that we need to plan better. We need to establish a proper budget plan, and we need to let everybody know who wishes to donate money to this great party of ours that the money is being spent effectively, and it is being spent towards the objectives that I have talked about earlier. Now, the issue of immigration is close to everybody's hearts, and I am going to talk about that. We presently have a net immigration that equates to the population of Wolverhampton or Hull every year. Immigration is overwhelming our public services, which themselves are being slashed, 25% off the police, for example, in some cases nearly 50% off local government. Housing and communities are being overwhelmed. It is harming our own culture, traditions, and way of life. We must demand that our own concerns about our own British culture are heard, and that feeds into our policy on immigration. The present rate of immigration is unacceptable. The Prime Minister has told us that use of a point system cannot work. She says it would mean that ministers would be unable to stop somebody entering the country who has not accrued sufficient points, or who has accrued sufficient points. Well, I've got news for you, Prime Minister. A sovereign independent nation can turn anybody away from their borders. Whether or not they have all the documentation, it's irrelevant. We can stop them entering. I'm becoming quite concerned about who's actually advising the Prime Minister. As I said yesterday, we must immediately start the process of leaving the Dublin III agreement that makes it almost impossible for us to stop non-EU citizens who have entered our country illegally from staying here. We are not permitted by the Dublin III agreement to send them back to the country, the EU country from which they came. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a great range of challenges ahead of us. We will only achieve success if we are united. That's one job done then. Day one. Outstanding. But success also depends entirely upon ourselves. We must believe in our history, we must believe in our future, and we must believe, above all, in ourselves. I'm doing well with my tasks. We must rouse ourselves, we must organise, and we as a party are a party of leaders. We've led in the referendum, we've led in Brexit, and we are going to lead in the future of Britain. Brexit remains our core task. To secure the future of this great nation is our purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, conference, failure is not an option.